The Mafia men were kings of their communities. They protected. There's a difference between the Godfather and a Scarface. There's a difference between embodying lordship and lording your power, as in your ego, over others. As a daughter who grew up without my physical biological father, and my appreciation for masculinity came largely from film. And I was emboldened and empowered at times in my life when I needed to be by the gangster archetypes of masculinity. There was a time in my life where I felt I couldn't afford my femininity. It was too vulnerable. And also, having been targeted by pedophiles and predators from a young age, due to being very mature intellectually for my age, and physically, my body being overdeveloped at the time, I began to masculinize myself as a defense mechanism. This was an interesting amalgamation of punk rock, goth aesthetic and attitude with this obsession to understand and to some degree embody the masculinity that I admired from gangster cinema and mafia films. And I came to realize very quickly that the masculinity that I appreciated in the gangster film genre was, in a sense, its own form of royalty. The mafia, many do not understand that every ethnic group has a mafia. They have a Chinese mafia, Japanese, they even have a Jewish mafia, a Russian mob, the Mexican cartels, every ethnic group, right? But what's even more interesting sociologically is that in these groups of what would seem to be marginalized ethnic communities in the United States, where unique identities had to be formed in this melting pot of what America is. That's what's so beautifully unique about America and about American cinema and gangster cinema within American cinema. These communities, in these communities, the mafia men were their kings, their princes, their lords, their governors, their satrapies, their viceroys. And also from an early age, I was always very well informed and fascinated by royalty, royal hierarchies. Royalty is not just beauty and luxury and power in the sense of I get what I want. Royalty is about service. You are a servant when you are a king. You are a servant when you are a queen. You are serving your empire when you are an emperor or empress. Because to whom much is given, much is required. It is a prodigiously heavy crown that you must precariously balance as royalty to serve the people well with wisdom and discretion, and at times well placed and well utilized aggression. Hierarchy is not about someone being superior or better. In fact, it is the one who seems to be superior that is actually the servant, that is actually making the sacrifice for the other. Even celebrities in our society are a form of royalty. They sacrifice their privacy, their autonomy, their anonymity, their identity to be worshipped and to serve in inspiring people and giving them an identity. And yes, they serve agendas for the elite powers that be. The mafia men were essentially kings of their communities. They protected. They weren't just drug lords. They weren't just, real godfathers. There's a difference between the godfather, such as a Don Corleone, and a Scarface, what I like to call the king versus the kingpin. So Don Corleone was merciful. He was gracious. He was prudent. He was wise. He was discerning. And he lamented his responsibility. He didn't lord it over people. He was indeed a lord. A lord is one who protects, who saves, who delivers. And what's also interesting is, we call God our Lord. But you also have, especially in Elizabethan Shakespearean English, you have this idea of wives calling their husbands Lord. And even in the Bible, they call God Lord, but they call authority figures Lord. Anyone in a position of authority that is in a position to protect and serve another is a lord. Yet there's a difference between being a lord and embodying lordship and lording your power, as in your ego, over others. There are nuances to the idea of this type of power. There's a power in the discretion with which a true king utilizes his strengths, again, to serve humbly, rather than someone who is power mad and power hungry, who uses it to feed their wounded ego. Oh, I got all the money. You gotta bow down to me. So there's a difference between Scarface and Don Corleone. Don Corleone was a family man. And this also, just going on a tangent here, slightly digressing, if you're familiar with the Orisha tradition, this is a problem that I have with many people in the New World who misconstrue and misrepresent the Orisha Shango. So many people in the New World, just as they over-sexualize Oshun, which we'll go into that another time, they over-sexualize Shango. Oh, he's a womanizer. He's a ladies' man. Oh, he's so sexy. He's so powerful. No, he's a king. He's a family man. His joy, in fact, is his family. He embodies that true African sense of a king, whose joy is in raising good children, raising up a good nation, seeing his nation flourish, not just having money and power and influence to get a bunch of women. So when we think of a king, we think of someone who cares for family and community and nation and the protection and preservation of the integrity of his culture. That's a king. So, in exploring gangster film, I was able to explore these archetypes along the spectrum of masculinity in a very unique way, and was able to learn lessons of masculinity where, in a sense, those men on film were proverbially my fathers, teaching me about the mind of men, their intelligence, their shrewdness, their strategy, the ways of war, how to play chess, not checkers. Shout out Denzel Washington in Training Day. So I just wanted to share that as a prelude to another Instagram Live that I'm planning sometime next week. I can't make any promises. I have to be very flexible and fluid with my schedule with 3 little ones at home. But I plan on doing another Instagram Live, part of the series of the hunter and the divine masculine, going into pimp-prostitute dynamics. And this very idea, I'll elucidate further on this very idea of the king versus the kingpin and how that manifests in relationship dynamics. So stay tuned. Blessings.